Good morning, good afternoon and good evening. Welcome back to my office, welcome back to the channel and thank you for joining me. We've got big news in the car market today. I say today, it happened a few days ago and it's all just starting to filter through now. Essentially, something big has happened that I think is going to cause some car dealerships to close. If car dealerships close, it means there's less dealerships in the market, same amount of cars. Is it going to drive car prices down? Is it going to drive them up? What's it going to look like? Nobody knows, but this is pretty serious. So serious hats on, and let's have a proper grown-up conversation today about what is going on, because it's pretty scary stuff. Okay, so there's no clickbait here. There has been big news in the industry, and essentially, I've done a video on this before, which is how do car dealers get the money? Where do they get the money from? And predominantly, there are three ways that they get the money. First one is it's their own funds. The second one is the cars don't belong to them, so it might be sale or return. And the third one is it's borrowed money. Usually in car sales or motorhomes or boats or whatever it might be, the stock is funded by something called a stocking funder. Stock funder is the right word. Essentially what they'll do is they'll say, I'll buy a car for 50,000 quid. I'll ring them up, I'll say, I've got a car here, bought it for 50 grand. They go, yeah, cool, we're willing to take that onto our platform. What we'll do is we'll write it into our name essentially, or do a transaction to show that it's their vehicle now. No change of ownership, just so it doesn't affect the logbook. And they'll give me my 50 grand back. And then what I can do is I can go out and buy another car, do the same. You tend to have a limit as to what your stocking facility will lend on. There's other different requirements on stocking funding as well. So it might be a car has to be under 10 years old, no more than 80,000 miles. It might be that there is a maximum amount they'll lend on each individual car, which is usually sort of 70 to 100 grand, whatever, because a lot of lenders won't get involved in sort of heavy stuff. That's basically what stocking funding is. Now, about a year ago, I got involved in stock funding. I'd never done it before, built the business organically. However, it just made sense to me that I could start to use someone else's money along with mine to try and grow the business. I know a lot of people are anti-debt, and there'll be loads of people in the comments below saying you're an idiot, borrowing is just a heading for disaster, etc. I disagree wholeheartedly, especially when you look at the Americans. They will borrow their desk if they have to borrow their desk to run a business. And I do think that if I can make money on a car that I couldn't have bought before without the stocking funding, then it's still money I've made that I couldn't have made before without the stocking funding, even if you have to pay some interest. Agree, disagree, whatever you might feel about that one, that's stocking funding. Now, I dipped my toe in last year. I came on with a company called Haydock. They were really good. A mate of mine called Phil who put me in touch with them, and I borrowed, I want to say it was 150 grand, or I was given a limit of 150 grand to use, which means I can put up to 150 grand's worth of debt on there. Now, the problem with stocking is more often than not, you need your own money in order to borrow against it and whatever. Anyway, Haydock closed business, and that was about 6 months into me using them, which was an absolute nightmare because I'd finally started getting into this stocking. Now, fortunately, somebody who worked at Haydock who was really helpful put me in touch with another company called V12. Now, V12 has been my stocking funder for coming up for probably about a year now, maybe a little bit less than a year, and they are great. They've got a fantastic product. So their terms as to when you need to pay it back can be extended. You're not put in a vulnerable position with their stocking. Now, unfortunately, for V12, they put themselves in a vulnerable position because essentially what they'll do is they'll lend 100% of whatever you borrow against a car. Buy a car for 50, they'll give you 50, as long as it's within trade values, etc. The position it leaves them in is if a dealer defaults and they go and collect their asset back, it might not be worth what it was when the dealer put it onto funding. So they've not given themselves enough tolerance. Long story short, they've pulled out the market. Now, why is this big news? I'll tell you why it's big news, because there aren't many stocking funders out there. As far as I'm aware, you can fund with some finance companies. So I know we use Motonova for our finance. I could use stocking with them. I'd set up a facility last year with them, never used it, so they ended up pulling the facility, which is sod's law now. But the reason I never used it is because they started to put a load of pressure on as soon as I got accepted. When are you loading a car? When are you loading a car? How many cars are we having this month? Blah, blah. And I just thought, no, I don't work under pressure, mate. I'm my own boss. I create my own pressure. I was kind of reluctant to use them anyway, and I'm certainly reluctant to go back to them because I'd rather just use my own money than have someone breathing down my neck. It's not how I want to operate. I went self-employed because I didn't want someone breathing down my neck. Taxman does enough of that, thank you. There are some lenders, for example, Motonovo, I want to say Close Brothers do it as well, which is another finance company that you can borrow a car from as a sort of retail customer, but also they do stock in funding. The problem with these is there is a massive, in my opinion, conflict of interest, which means that what they basically say is we'll give you a really good term, a really good rate on our stock in funding, as long as you use us for your finance when it comes to customers. And I think there's a big conflict of interest there, because I will genuinely get a customer the best rate they can get. I've got Motonova that I use, and if they can't get a good rate, I've then got brokers I can go to. That's your job, FCA regulated, you need to do that. So I'm not for borrowing from the people who also do my finance. I think there's a problem there. And that leaves not many. There's BCA, which do their own funding. So if you buy a car through BCA, which is an auction house, you can just stick it onto their funding. Apparently they're very expensive. Apparently the terms aren't good. I don't buy from BCA anyway, so that's a bit of a write-off for me. And then the only other two that I'm aware of are LE Capital and Next Gear. Next Gear, all I've ever heard are bad things about Next Gear. They came in here trying to poach business off me, saying they'd match V12's terms and all this sort of stuff. And they basically said, we'll match their terms. I said, well, what's the point in swapping over if you're going to match them? Our customer service is better. I don't particularly care how much does it cost to borrow the money. Do you know what I mean? And I've only ever heard bad things about the way that they take the fees, and there's about 800 direct debits. And I could be wrong, but I've just heard bad press about them. I could be wrong. And the other one is LE Capital. Now, LE Capital essentially will come into your dealership and go, here's £250,000. And again, this is what I've heard. Here's £250,000. Use it whenever you want to use it, but we're going to start charging you interest on the entire amount now. It's like having a credit card and your limit is £4,000 and they're charging you interest just for having that limit. It's that sort of thing. Now, my argument there is I may as well just have a loan, because it's essentially charged the interest in the same way, and at least I'm paying the loan back over 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be. Now, I had a fallout with LE Capital because they used to come in here regularly trying to pitch for business. And I probably could have been firmer, but I was fairly to the point that I was happy with what I was doing and I'm not really interested. The last time they sent somebody in, I unfortunately wasn't here, and they sent a salesman in who was very rude to Callum and made himself comfortable in some of the areas of the business where you're not meant to go, so into the detailing bay, into the bar area, sort of making himself at home. Was very sort of standoffish with Callum. I then got an email from his manager about a week later asking if we were interested, and I didn't hold back in my response to the email. So I've kind of burnt my bridge with LE Capital, but I don't care anyway. I don't like the product. So this is pretty big news in the industry, because we're always talking about how margins are tighter, everything's more expensive, business rates have gone up, tax, NI, you name it. And now all of a sudden, a very, very good funder has pulled out of the market. And I think there's going to be a ripple effect here across the market. And I just wanted to do a video about it and just explain it now, that you might be seeing car dealerships closing because they can't afford to operate using other funders. I'm fortunate, and I'm not saying that I'm better than other car dealerships. I'm not. Other car dealerships are better than me in many ways, I'm sure. I just try and paddle my own canoe as best I can. And I'm always really wary as to how much I borrow. There's normally more in the bank than I've borrowed, which sounds a bizarre way of doing things, but the reason for that is if I need to buy a car, I can quickly dive on it and then get my money back out of stocking if I want to do. There's rationale here, there is financial sense. So I'm kind of okay. I can just get rid of the stocking funding if I want to do, although I am looking at sort of alternatives. I'm genuinely thinking about a business loan, actually. If someone wants to loan me some money at a really nominal interest rate and not break my legs, don't break my legs. I like my legs. You don't seem to like them in shorts, but I like my legs. They're good for walking on. Then I'll be happy to take your money. But jokes aside, I do think that this is going to be a bit of an issue for the industry. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I know of plenty of dealerships that are closing anyway because they predominantly work on stocking. They don't have their own investment in. There might be big companies with a few directors and no one's, sort of put directors' loans in. This business owes me quite a lot of money because all I've done, I say quite a lot of money, it's a lot to me, but all I've done over the years is build up as much as I can do, put it back in, build up as much, put it back, always reinvested. I'm sort of fairly safe in that respect, but it is going to have a detrimental effect on me as well because I'm trying to grow this. I've done videos talking about trying to get bigger and better cars in more expensive stuff in, and that is unlikely to happen if I don't have stocking. It's just another kick, isn't it? Another blow for the car dealer. This is the email that we received from V12 to tell us that we're no longer getting funding. And basically what it said is they're writing to inform you that following a review of its businesses, SecureTrust Bank, which is the bank that essentially owns V12, has announced that on the 2nd of July 2025, it's decided to stop all new lending in its vehicle finance business. This includes stock funding business because they also do finance to the general public as well. Therefore, writing to terminate your used vehicle stocking agreement, which is obviously quite a nasty email to get. I did get a phone call from the manager who worked there before this email came through, so it wasn't shocking news. Now, the good news is when funders tend to pull out the market, they give you a bit of time. So they've given us until 30th of September to continue to load cars on, and then thereafter, what will happen is they'll run those stocking facilities down. So it's no massive panic station, but I've got a sneaky feeling there's going to be some dealers out there that are feeling the pinch. Now, I have had a phone call from somebody that I know there might be another alternative, but I'm still looking into it myself, and I will keep you informed if you're a car dealer as to what I found as an option. But yeah, it's just when you think. I remember getting the phone call. I was driving back in that Bentley when I got the phone call, and I just thought, oh, I was having a good day there, mate. It's all gone the wrong way. The worst thing in all of this, of course, is all the people that are losing their jobs, and they're all now trying to find places to go and places to work. Yet another damaging blow to British business, isn't it? Anyway, don't keep you abreast of the situation back here. We're all okay. I'm currently moving some of my tropical fish out of one tank into another tank, so that's my biggest concern of the day. First world problems. Thanks again for watching. Really appreciate your time, and I'll see you on the next one, hopefully with some positive news. Cheers.